This is the story of an attempt to explore the headwaters of two rivers in the Alaskan Arctic. My partner, Alan Dixon, and I plan to hike and float the headwaters of the Alatna and Noatak rivers in Gates of the Arctic National Park, connecting the rivers by crossing the Continental Divide via the remote and beautiful Eregetch Peaks. Our plan was to rendezvous in Fairbanks, then the next day catch a flight to the Arctic village of Bettles, where we would transfer to a float plane and fly to our drop-off point at Gedeke Lake, inside Gates of the Arctic National Park, at the headwaters of the Alatna River. In the summer, the village of Bettles can only be reached by plane. Northwest of Bettles lies the Brooks Range, which is split by the Continental Divide, separating the drainage of the Yukon River to the south from the Arctic Ocean to the north. From Gedeke Lake, our plan was to hike and float the Alatna for about 50 miles, then hike across the rugged Eregetch Peaks, crossing the Continental Divide for about 40 miles, followed by another 40 miles on the Noatak River. If we ran into trouble, we could retreat to the Alatna and float south to Takahula Lake, our alternate pickup spot. Here we are at Gedeke Lake, right on the Continental Divide. Continental Divide's right up on the hill. It's about 4:30, day one of our traverse of the Eregetch and floating the Noatak and the Alatna. So we're gonna pack up, hopefully hike down a few miles, try to stay out of the mush, and get to the point, hopefully, where we can kind of be ready to start floating tomorrow, and then we'll spend the whole day on the Alatna tomorrow. It looked beautiful. Flew up the valley before. It's just spectacular. So I'm pretty psyched. Cool. We made the 2.5-hour trudge down through the mush, tussocks, from Gedeke Lake to the Alatna. The Alatna is about 5 or 6 inches deep. Yeah. In a good spot. So we'll see how that works out. The river was shallow in many spots on the first evening, forcing us to drag our boats for much of the first few hours. Late in the day, we were cold and tired and ready to camp when we spotted a grizzly bear across the river, high on the hillside. Not wanting to camp near the bear, we walked and paddled for another hour before collapsing in camp about 10 p.m. For the next day and a half, we paddled down the Alatna, sometimes wet and sometimes cold, hoping to make it to the junction of the Alatna River and Arrogetch Creek by the middle of our third day, where we'd begin hiking up into the Arrogetch Peaks. Paddled 31 miles today on the Alatna. It was wet, very splashy, cold water, so we were cold most of the day. But got down here, we're about 12 or 13 miles from Arrogetch Creek, so should be going up there by noon tomorrow. Now there's about a zillion little flies in the air. Yeah, our rafts got pretty beat up, but so far so good. So about noon tomorrow, we should be out of the Alatna and heading into the Arrogetch. Because there are no established trails and gates of the Arctic National Park, the trick is to find the one large game trail that heads up Arrogetch Creek, that is also used by hikers. It's not on any map, and if you don't find it, you will suffer, and you will thrash in heavy brush for 8 miles. Having fun?
Oh my God. If I never see another alder as long as I live, it will be too soon.
We suffered plenty looking for the trail, with some of the most hideous bushwhacking either of us had ever done. After a few hours of searching and bushwhacking, we did find the game trail, and got into camp at the base of the Arrogetch Peaks about 8 p.m. The weather had deteriorated over the course of the day, and the next morning dawned cold, windy, and wet. We decided to use one of our spare days, hoping the weather would improve. We spent the day exploring the amazing peaks of the Arrogetch and returned to our camp in the afternoon.
Where it's just Armageddon up there on the Arrogetch. The weather's just pouring in.
So day 4, crappy weather. Raining, it's been raining for a couple hours, off and on all day. Looks extremely grim up in the air, higher in the Arrogetch. So we're happy to be huddled here. And gonna figure out the plan. The next morning, the weather dawned even worse.
We decided to use what was probably our final free day, exploring another drainage in the Arrogetch. We knew now that we would need a real turn in the weather if we were going to make it across the Arrogetch to the Noatak River. It didn't look good.
Wow.
Awesome avalanche here.
The next morning, it was still raining, and snow covered all the high peaks. We knew our bid to get across the Arrogetch was over, so we packed up and headed back toward the Alatna.
We are camped back along the Alatna, just a couple miles we made today after we came down Arrogetch Creek. Big problem today is it's cold and there's a huge headwind coming out of the south, blowing right upstream, which pretty much made paddling extremely difficult. So
Wow.
yeah, we had to get out and walk, drag our boats some sections, and so we kind of decided to pull over and hope it gets a little better tomorrow, and we'll just have to wait and see.
The next morning it was decidedly not better, with horrible conditions. Very heavy winds blowing upstream and horizontal rain blowing in our face. The first couple of hours were extremely cold.
Very cold. So lunchtime, day 7. We spent about 3 hours on the river in constant rain and wind, but we made 10 miles or so and pulled out. Alan started this fire in this virtual swamp that we're sitting in, but we've been here for about an hour and now we're like new people, all warmed up, got some food. We actually saw enough sunlight to cast a shadow, so we'll get back on the river and only a few more miles to Takahula Lake.
It can be done.
What can be done, Alan?
you can actually get out of a rain jacket in a bivy sack. If there are enough mosquitoes, you can find you can find a way.
Very good. Well, making this little video cost me about 70 mosquito bites.
If we hadn't slept in the swamp. In paradise here, as you can see, it's bluebird skies for the umpteenth day in a row. It's been raining and blowing 30-40 miles an hour all night, drizzling. This morning while we set up to camp, it's probably about 45 degrees. It's you know, it's just wonderful to be in Alaska.
The next day, we finally left the Alatna. We hiked through a mosquito-infested swamp to reach Takahula Lake. We had to paddle a mile across the lake to the opposite shore to reach a beach where our plane could pick us up. Our final paddle was into the wind with rain in our face. The bad weather had caused a lot of backups and stranded people back in Bettles. There was no place to stay in Bettles, so we crashed on the concrete floor of the airplane hangar with a few other kindred spirits. We had a great celebration in our last night in the Arctic.